I know that orchestra teachers really don't like it when contest judges criticize their tempo or their interpretation of how fast or slow a piece of music should go. If you look at m to the third power right from the beginning, where a lot of times you'll see a tempo indicator, you see marcato. And marcato is not a tempo, it's a style. Sometimes composers mix up style with tempi. For instance, maestoso sometimes will be written as a tempo instead of a style. One time I was in the sight reading room and I got a piece of music in front of me that I'd never seen before, and the tempo was indicated as flowingly. I don't have any clue how fast flowingly is. So we're going to have to do a little better than that if you want people to play your piece of music correctly. There's a couple of clues that he gives on how fast the piece should be. The first clue that he gives is right here, where he says, the composition may be played at a moderate tempo or very fast. I would recommend the tempo most comfortable for your group. The qualifier is in the sentence prior, a moderate tempo or very fast. So what's comfortable for the orchestra within that range, not within all ranges of tempi ever. If they're playing it under tempo because they don't have the technique to play within the acceptable range of tempi, that's going to be a problem, because think about, a director later on that's going to be teaching that student that needs to have an acceptable grade 3 piece of music to put in front of them that they can be comfortable with and play, and they didn't quite have the technique to be able to play it at the appropriate tempo at the time, but now, they're in a high school ensemble or something, and this would be a perfect piece for them. Well, they can't really program that piece if they played it back in middle school severely under tempo. And so you can take away a good musical and teaching opportunity from a student later on in their playing career by programming something a little too early where they're not quite ready for it. We have sort of an understanding in our school district with our intermediate schools and our middle schools and high schools that it's not cool to take pieces, especially if they're on the PML, and play them too early. If they're going to do that, let's go off the list so that it especially won't affect our contest scores. If we want a precise metronomic marking, Carol Nunez gives us another clue right here where it says duration approximately 3 minutes. We could do a little bit of math here to figure out what tempo that would be. So we count up all of the measures, but that doesn't quite give us enough information. So we have to break down measures by meter since the meter changes. So we have 114 2/4 bars. We have 35 3/8 bars. And we also have 8 3/4 bars. Add up all of the eighth notes that are in each meter, so we have 456 eighth notes in the 2/4 measure. We have 105 eighth notes in the 3/8 measures, and we have 48 eighth notes in the 3/4 measures. You add them all up, and you get 609 eighth notes total in this piece. And we also have to take a little bit of consideration for this fermata in measure 43, because that's going to extend the length too. So we divide 609 by 3, which will give us the total number of eighth notes per minute, which is going to be about 204 and a half. And then we're going to divide that by 2 in order to get the number of beats per minute that go with the metronome. And we're looking just over 100 beats per minute, approximately, according to the duration of the piece. So if we're going too far below 100, we're going a bit too slow. When I'm judging an orchestra and they're playing it within the 60 to 70 beats per minute range, well, now it's going to turn into like a 4 to 4.5 minute piece, and it's just too far out of spec. And that's why I'll make the argument that the piece really needs to go a little faster. And considering the style and the energy that needs to go into this, it really needs to be faster in order to give the effect that it's supposed to give and be a successful performance. When we look at Nunez's explanation of the meter, I really like that he doesn't use fractions here. It's very confusing for students if they see time signatures as fractions, because they're not fractions at all, and we shouldn't teach meter as if they were fractions. They don't have that similar meaning, and it really disrupts their thinking when it comes to compound time. The 3/8 measures and m to the third power should be conducted in 1, not 3, when we look at measure 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 for this example here, and we conduct it. We're not going to conduct it 1 and 2e and a 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2, and it's just not going to work that way. We need to conduct 1 and 2e and a 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3. That's going to give a better feel for the 3/8 measures. And we're not going to reduce that down to a measure of 3 beats and the 8th note gets the beat. It's going to be more confusing for the students to play in the long run, and it's not going to give the feel or the style where we have the meter changes from simple to compound time. Kel Nunez recommends that you write this on the board and you show the students how to count it. And he uses the traditional counting system here, which is what I use in my classroom. If you use a different counting system, it's not going to really make any difference. Don't worry about it. He also draws these arrows down, up, and I think he's talking about the downbeat versus the upbeat. He might have his students tap their feet, and the physical motion involved in foot tapping would probably be helpful to the students to learn rhythm. When I teach this, I have the students verbalize a similar passage to count out loud with a metronome so that they know what's going on and they can kind of get a feel for the meter. And it really helps if the students are moving while they're doing that. And if it's a foot tap, it would make just as much sense as anything else. The only thing that I would suggest is that in measure 9, like these compound time measures, that the foot is going up on beat 2 and beat 3 and comes down on beat 1, and you want to conduct it the same way. You want to, when you conduct, you go into beat 1, and then 2, 3, you're still going up, and then 1, because that gives you the most control over when the orchestra plays. And in conducting, the goal is to create predictability, and you want to create the predictability of where the 8th note is to prepare them for the next 2/4 measure. So 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2, and the baton should be going up, and the students' feet should be going up, and everybody should be coming down at the same time. Something else that's fun about this, and it's fun to conduct in mixed meter, and it's fun for the students to do it too, so you might want to get them to conduct themselves as well, and they can 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3. They can have a blast doing that too. They don't need to use a baton or anything. They can just use their hands. It's fine. No big deal. And they have a lot of fun with it. Again, it's something physical that they can do to help them feel the meter and feel the rhythms. It's kind of Delcrozian in a way. Nunez also recommends that students must understand rhythms and meter changes before attempting sections, such as measure 9 through 12. In other words, I would not have students struggling for notes and meter changes at the same time. And I think that's brilliant. You only want to teach one thing at a time. Don't overload your students with 10 different things to work on. Give them one thing to work on and master that. Now, you have to do it in a way to where they're only doing one aspect of the measure. So they're not finding the notes with the left hand at the same time as they're learning the counting, and they're not learning the counting at the same time as they're learning how to use the bow. So I like to have the students verbalize and then bow an open D string with the rhythms that they have as it appears in context 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Visually, you can look at your students and you can see who's using the right bowings and who's not. Somebody that's not quite with everybody, you kind of know where to focus and to target your attention. It's rare at contests or festivals that I hear any students miss any of these rhythms. The way it's written, it just kind of has a groove to it that flows. I haven't heard too many disasters of this, and maybe I've just been lucky, but most of the time, teachers do a good job with teaching the rhythm. It's just isolating the rhythm from the pitch, from the finger patterns, from the style. We want to make sure that we introduce each component by itself so that we don't give up something to just get the rhythm. In measure 64, this is the section of the music that I tend to hear the most rhythm and tempo problems here. Sometimes the basses will start rushing their pizzicato notes here, and sometimes the violas and cellos will start dragging. Particularly the cellos will tend to drag this if they are playing too close to the frog and they're getting a little too heavy. Sometimes they'll play this too slowly and they'll start to drag. Basses will start to rush and we end up with phasing problems, and sometimes you kind of just holding our breath to see if we can make it to some of these landmark spots, like, you know, the meter changes in 77 and that kind of thing, without slowing down speed and without separating too much. We got to make sure that everybody is in the same part of the bow, and a lot of this works great in the middle of the bow, especially if you're playing on the string. It can get fast enough to where you can saute if you're playing at a fast enough tempo, but for the classification that this piece was intended for, you're probably not going to have your students saute. You're probably going to be playing other literature. For 99% of orchestras out there, it's going to be on the string, middle of the bow. If you're going to saute, you need to move a little bit to the upper half where that bow starts to skip a little bit. But I've really never heard any orchestra at a contest or festival play the saute. I think it would be really interesting to hear. And I've never had any of my orchestras that have played this play saute either. In the next video, we're going to address some of the style in M to the third power, some of the nuance that really makes it pop and sound great. And in that style is the difference between a good performance and a great performance, a performance that just kind of pops, a performance where you can hear all of the detail in the music and all of the effects that Carol Nunez wrote kind of come out, and it makes a big difference. So watch out for the next video coming out, and we'll talk about style.